honored to be able to introduce our powerhouse panel today. Again, these are women who've achieved the results that I think everybody wants, and the success in this business, and they are amazing role models. So I'm going to briefly introduce you to their backgrounds, and then we'll jump into the conversation. Okay, next up is Jessica Adams. She's the president of the Jessica Adams Group and a top producing agent at Sotheby's International Realty. She works in Coconut Grove and the surrounding neighborhoods of Miami, Florida. In the real estate business for 8 years, she has completed $175 million in sales. She moved to Sotheby's in 2019. In 2019, her production income ranked her number 2 company-wide for Sotheby's International Realty, and she was recently featured with an elite group of agents in this year's Who's Who in Miami Real Estate in Miami Agent Magazine. Prior to real estate, Jessica was an occupational therapist and has her strong connections to the University of Miami educational and medical departments continue. Okay, we're going to move on to Jessica. Speaking of preparation, how do you prepare for your negotiations? One of the questions I have is, how do you identify who is the decision maker that you're working with? Sometimes it's not as obvious as it seems. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So first of all, I want to thank you guys for inviting me to this. Just being a year into having the brand, I will tell you it has been absolutely extraordinary to meet all the most amazing women throughout the country and Canada, and throughout going to Gianni's and everything. It's been amazing. So I'm honored to be a part of this group. Thank you so much. So when it comes to preparation and knowing who is the decision maker, I think it's all about reading people. I think exactly what you ladies have spoken about. I think it's also an intuition, but I think it's also listening. I think if you can listen to someone's motivation and understand why they're in this process to begin with, it might be their family is growing. It might be, a death in the family. It could be a separation. There's all these emotional things, as we discussed, that go along with the purchase of the property. And sometimes if there is a couple, there might be one of them that is the driving force, and there might actually be a switching of those people making the decision. It might start with, you're talking to the wife about what she likes and what, they want to look for. And then maybe the financial aspect changes. Or it could be vice versa. So I think it's definitely about listening to the motivation, also finding out what the deal breaker is for them. I think there are certain times that you can push, but I think there's another time that you have to decide in the negotiation, is it the time to step back and realize that the overall relationship is more important than the actual deal that's in front of you. And I think that's the time when you really realize that it's about the relationship, it's not about the paycheck. Because if you lose that relationship, you're losing something much bigger than just one listing or just one buyer. You're losing probably a series of people throughout your life that could, become friendships, could become pipeline for later on down the line. But I think it's all about having integrity in your negotiation on the other side and knowing what their motivation is.
Such a great point. Thank you for that reminder of the big picture. We're going to move through one more question for each of you. The next question, which is, we don't get to pick our co-broker. And sometimes some of the biggest challenges that we all face are the person that we have to work with. I always use the analogy of tennis. I played when I was younger. I don't play now. If I went out there and played with someone who was good, I'd probably hit the ball pretty good. And if I got out there and played with my husband, who hasn't played since he was a kid, it would be a complete flop. So the co-broke can make or break how our transaction goes. So Jessica, I'd love for you to share some experiences you've had and how you've dealt with co-brokers and challenges. And
yeah, so insights. For me, I always, this one of my big mantras in this industry is that I feel like the person on the other side, it can make or break the deal. And I think that for me is almost like between the client and the broker, it's really the number one relationship in the transaction, because the reality is we all play in the same sandbox and you want to have that continued relationship. And when you have the respect of your other co-brokers in your neighborhood or in your city, wherever you have, they'll know that, you know, this person brings in good buyers, this person has good listings, this person is diligent. I think you don't get to pick the person, but I think you do get to pick what you bring to the table. And for me, I start from day one. From the day, if I'm on the buying side, it comes from the day that I make the showing request. I make sure that I'm prepared. I make sure I'm on time. I make sure that exactly what you said, pull the comps, know the neighborhood. I think that it's very important for you to be confident in what you're selling, whether it's your product as the listing agent or your product as the buying agent, and just being that sounding board. With the other agent on the other side, I think it's important to get to know their style. What I always call people, my big rule in negotiation is there's no texting and there's no emailing during negotiation. I think that things are very much misconstrued during the negotiation process in an email or a text message that could have, you know, maybe caught the person at a bad time. Maybe something else is going on. I think, you know, right now with COVID-19 is a perfect example. You're stressed at home with your kids, you have a lot going on. And I know in the Miami market, we're picking up tremendously where I'm working and trying to be a school teacher all at once. So I think for you to get that focus, it's important to take the time out, breathe, and really have that conversation with the other person, because, you know, there might not be someone experienced on the other end, and that's okay. We may have been there at some point in time. I know I started out and I had a mentor, and I would talk to them about things that I needed to discuss in a negotiation, but some people don't have that. So I've decided that if I'm in a negotiation with someone new, I'm there to mentor them on the other side. I'm there to guide them. I'm not there to belittle them. I'm not there to make it a bad conversation. I'm there to help them understand what my point of view is. And, you know, you might have a difficult client, and it's okay to voice it on the other side and say, you know what, this is where they're at. How can we come together? This is where your client is. This is where my client is. How do we work together to make this happen? And sometimes maybe it's something creative where we think outside of the box. Maybe it's not about money. Maybe it's, I just had a negotiation that my client got the house, and it was that the sellers were buying a new construction home and they were terrified to sell and let go of the house because they were going to be homeless. Ironically, it ended up happening during COVID-19. And we got the house because my clients were willing to let them stay for 6 months rent free. So they got the house that they wanted. They didn't have a rush. They let the seller stay there rent free. And we put the negotiation together, and the seller bought with me the pre-construction that I put together as well. So it's, you know, there's a lot of creative things you can do. And I think if you're working together as opposed to working against each other, you're going to get a lot further in life and in general, especially in negotiations.
Jessica, that was great. You know, we started the conversation talking about role models, and I think you all just showed us what being a role model is to the agents that we're working with. And I loved how you used the word mirror, that if you act a certain way and hope that they will mirror how you're acting. That's fabulous.